Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Hi, everyone. This is Katana Abbott, and I want to welcome you all to Smart Women Talk. Today, we're going to be interviewing Midlife Courage Coach, Sheree Clark, about finding the courage to stop talking and start doing. Today, Sheree and I are going to talk about things like how to get in touch with what you really want. Very important. The very first step that precedes all acts of courage, and practical tips for facing down fear. She's a midlife courage coach, TV show host, inspiring speaker, accomplished author. And Sheree has written and presented on topics ranging from finding your passion to overcoming career burnout. She appears in a weekly segment of KCWI, Channel 23, called Fork in the Road with Sheree Clark, while maintaining a busy practice of coaching clients one-to-one and groups in an authentically fulfilling life. And in her personal time, Sheree and her cat Lotus, who might be joining us today, does Lotus poses with her, or yoga poses with her. Hi, Sheree, and welcome to Smart Women Talk. So why do you call yourself a midlife courage coach? I'm interested in how you came up with this.
I have a little slogan that I say, and when I say it, any woman who's midlife usually nods her head. I call myself a midlife courage coach because I believe that you should live the second half of your life for you when you've lived the first half of your life for everyone else. And it takes guts to do that, and that equals courage, and thus I am a courage coach.
And it really does take courage. Now, I want to ask you something. You spent many years in corporate. Was that one of the scariest things you did when you left your big job?
Yes, actually. What's even scarier than it wasn't corporate. I was an entrepreneur who had a successful business of her own for 25 years, and I decided I was going to shut it down. At the age of 53, I had a brick and mortar business. I had employees. We were in the seven figures in our revenues, and I didn't love it. And more than didn't love it, there were times that I absolutely detested it. And it's not a good place to be when you're not happy in your career, but especially when you own the business. Because what happens is it makes it really difficult for your employees to work for you. When you're not even happy yourself, when you dread going into work, it's hard to get people to perform. And I realized that I was undermining my own success. We were still doing well financially. But frankly, for me, if you were to ask me the defining moment, one of the stories that I tell is that I was sitting in church one Sunday and I happened to glance down at my watch and burst into tears. And it wasn't because of the sermon. It was because I realized that in less than 24 hours, I had to be back at my desk at a job, if you will, where I was the jailer. I was the warden. It was a prison of my own making.
What did you do about that when it happened?
For me, the aha moments, what we call the aha moment is the moment of decision. When you say the dam is broken, it's the one too many straws, the card that knocked over the deck, whatever it is you want to call it. But here's the thing that I found, Katana, is that it's a slow build. It's usually for when we want to make a change, what happens is you have this small realization in your head, something's not right. Let's say I call it the itch. So you have this feeling of slight discontent. And sometimes that's a passing thing. It's like, oh, it's a busy time. Oh, money's tight. Oh, whatever it is. And so sometimes those will go away. But when you have them and they don't go away, and I'm talking about for months or possibly years, it took me an embarrassing amount of time. I call myself a courage coach, but I cringe because I didn't have the courage to get out of the position I was in immediately. It took me a good long time to finally decide it's time to go. I've got to do this or I am going to die unhappy.
So how long has it been for you?
I left in 2009 at the age of 53, and this week I will be 63. So it'll be just 10 years. It was an interesting time, and it was a scary time because during that tough economic time, I have to confess, I thought to myself, geez, do I just stay where I'm at because I'm taking a big, gigantic risk? But here's the thing, your life is now. And I got one life as far as I know, and it's this one. And so sometimes that means risk. You took a sabbatical, some time off. And I commend you for that. I think that that's awesome and amazing. And that is actually something that I would coach my women to do if they were set up in a position where that's something that's possible. I did an intermediate step. So anybody listening that says, yeah, that's great for them, I can't take a year off, that's not outside of my realm. An intermediate step is to do something along the lines of something outside. I call it shiny object. I felt frustrated in the work that I was doing. I felt unfulfilled. I felt bored. I was just like, it wasn't lighting my fire. And so I took continuing ed for fun in fields outside of my own. I went to culinary school and got a culinary certification, which has nothing to do with advertising. I owned an advertising agency. I took classes in metaphysics. I took herbs and oils and all those kinds of things and did things to stimulate myself outside of my work.
What do you say to people that are afraid to do something like this? Because I'm sure they come to you for advice to get this courage. And is there an assessment you have them do, or how do you help them get through that?
It depends on what kinds of steps it is that they need to take and where they are in their lives. Someone taking what they call a risk at 48 is in a different place than someone at 65 who might be looking at the same decision. And typically the decisions have to do usually with leaving something, leaving a marriage, leaving a friendship, leaving your home, leaving your business. And either leaving it to leave it or go someplace else. And so I ask a series of questions, and they're not always, it's not rote, it's not prescription. It would be questions like, what's it costing you to stay? And by that, I don't mean necessarily your balance sheet. What's it costing you in terms of sleep, your health, your relationships, your mental health, any of those kinds of things? What opportunities are you missing? How long are you going to wait? And people, oftentimes their answers or the things, their reasoning would include things like, it's too late. Hell, if it's too late. Like I said, I was 53. And one of the things that my friends said to me was, you're not that far away from actually being able to retire. So what if you just hung on another 10 years and, and just ride it out? Is it really that bad? Yes, it is that bad. And then you're letting your fears interfere with your advice to me. I want to say one other thing before we move on, and that is, I don't always counsel women to leave. That's not always what I would say. And in fact, I don't give advice. I give coaching, which means helping you to come to your own conclusions. So the answer is not always you got to go. The answer could be someplace in between, stay and keep it as it is, or get the hell out of here. There's a whole array of shades of gray in between.
Can you share two things? Because I think I heard you say two things. One was setting up these systems, but the other was if someone is burnt out and not enjoying what they're doing, finding ways to get that joy and that diversity, let's say, in their life by doing something outside of work that's still fulfilling. Because so often people think they want to go off and start a business or do something else, but they don't realize it's going to take, a long time to do that. And they need to do it maybe on a part-time basis until that income is enough that they can leave.
Exactly. You're reminding me, I had a client named Diane who worked for a major insurance company here in Des Moines, a pretty big insurance city. And she was unhappy in her job, and she was an executive, nicely paid. And she wanted to become a massage therapist, which is, talk about the other end of the spectrum, right? And so she had gone through massage school, gotten her certification, and she came to me and she said, I'm having a hard time deciding when to jump. And my counsel to her was, I said, why do you have to jump?
Right.
What if instead of jumping off the high dive into this pond, is there a way that you can wade into it? So, for example, because I said,
I love that. Do you use that analogy a lot?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay.
And so I said, benefits were important to her. And when we're of a certain age, not just health insurance, but the other benefits. I said, because you've been with the company for a while, you're a valuable employee, it's a large company. What if you go to them and talk about what an exit strategy could look like? Is there a way, could you reduce the number of hours that you're working? Could you go, rather than being a salaried employee, to an hourly? Could you be part-time rather than full-time? How can we maneuver this so that your commitment there is reduced and you can grow your business and you're fading away and rising into, which is exactly what she did. So they found the tipping point for her, how much she had to work to still be eligible for benefits. We ended up crafting a schedule so that she was there longer hours, but fewer days per week, so that the alternate days she could work on getting her business up and running. And then when she did finally pull the plug and leave the corporation, it was less painful. Nothing is pain-free, right?
Right.
It was not as risky. It was smoother. It was kinder to the employer she was leaving. So there are graceful ways of doing it. And what happens, the thing that makes me cringe, is that I see so many people get into black and white thinking. I got to quit my job and start my own thing, or I got to stay here and be miserable. No, people, there's a million other ways to skin this cat. And maybe there's something else that's bothering you, and it isn't even the job at all. And if you do take a risk, make it a smart risk. Make sure that you look under the hood of that used car before you buy it, and that you've done your due diligence, and just even be thinking about what your projections are and what can you do, not just revenue coming in, but things going out. If you change, would your expenses be increased or reduced based on what it is you're changing from or to? In the instance of my LMT client, she had some capital things, expenditures that she needed for startup. She had to buy equipment. She needed a massage table. She needed to rent a space. She didn't want people coming into her home. She needed some liability insurance. There were CEUs. None of those things were expenses that she had in the corporate environment. So doesn't it make sense to get those things paid up front while you still have revenue coming in as an employee?
Absolutely. All of that takes courage, because now that I know women their skin's probably crawling, a lot of people that don't like dealing with it. So when you start working with people and talking about these kind of things, how do they react?
Absolutely. Typically, a lot of times what I'll find is that women are new to this whole arena, even the topic that we're talking about, because especially because of the population that I'm dealing with. I was born in 1956. We were brought up with traditional gender roles. And in many cases, certainly not all of us, but the men took care of certain things and the women weren't privy to it. And if I run into a client that has that kind of experience in her background, then one of the things that I do is we work to overcome the fear of that. And it's the fear of the unknown. I don't even balance my checkbook. My husband takes care of all that, or whatever. And to understand that doesn't mean that you can't do it. And it doesn't mean that you won't do it well. It means that you're new at it. And just like anything that you're new at, my computer upgraded today. Okay. So it's new. I've got a new interface. My desktop looks different. It's all new. My first reaction was, I want it back the old way. Why did I have to do this upgrade? I want it the old way. But the reality is that these things happen. I'm going to have to get used to this new interface, and just about the time I get it figured out, it'll be a new upgrade. That's what life does. And so not be fearful of those things, and to walk into them willingly, and to find a trusted ally or allies or board of. I have a lawyer, an accountant, an advisor to my business. I've got a coach, a business coach. I have people that I trust who talk to each other on my behalf.
Wow.
So think of it as your board of directors. Think of it as your team. You are not having to do this alone.
And they'll keep you out of trouble.
Right.
That's so important. There was something I heard you say. Can you talk about the difference between doing hard things and getting through hard times? I thought that was interesting.
Yes. Sometimes when I talk about courage, I say that there are two kinds of people think of courage in two ways. So when you say courage, outside of the context of this situation, I might say so-and-so has a lot of courage. Sometimes what we think of is we think of somebody who, for example, ran into a burning building to save someone, or got diagnosed with some life-threatening illness and stared death in the face and persevered through it and lived their life and did whatever. Those kinds of courage are reactive. Mm-hmm. See a burning building, you make the decision to go inside. You're given a diagnosis, you make the determination, I'm going to give it all I got and I'm going to live. Those are reactive. The other kind of courage that I think actually is harder is the kind of courage where you're not reacting to something, where you are making the determination, it's coming from inside, and you're saying, there is no burning building. I don't have cancer or a life-threatening illness, but I am not happy. Things are not working for me, and I've got to get myself into a situation where they do work for me. That is the second kind of courage. And that's why I say there's a difference between getting through hard things and doing hard things.
So in the doing hard things is, for example, doing the work, right? The planning, hiring someone, spending money. It's very scary to hire a coach. It's very scary to go and buy that equipment or sign for a lease, for example. So is that the hard thing that you're talking about?
Sometimes the hard thing is even out loud saying, my life looks really good from the outside, but I'm a mess and I need help. Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing for many people. And here's the other thing about courage. What's difficult for me might be a walk in the park for you.
Right.
And vice versa. And so for anybody listening that says, those two are talking about something I could never do. Okay, but you listener who is having that thought, there's something that you have, an innate skill, an ability, a talent, something that that if we asked you for help with, you'd go, you're kidding me. That's so easy.
Is there ever a time that you feel afraid? And then what do you do yourself when you are scared? Or you are finding yourself in fear?
It's one of those things, again, it part of it depends on what's the basis of it. The first thing I do is try to figure out where this unease, this dis-ease is coming from. Is it something that is outside of my direct control, like the stock market? And the stock market itself is outside of my direct control. How much I have put myself at risk with regard to it is certainly not outside of my control. But I've got a limited amount of what I could possibly do with regard to that. Other things like people's reaction to things, because not all people have business concerns. That's not the only place that fear comes from. While you're waiting for the results of a mammogram that you had to have redone because they didn't get a good reading or because something was a little troublesome, or a pap smear that you had to have retaken, that's a window of time that can induce a great deal of fear that, once again, you can't do anything about, but you can. And the thing that you can do is figure out how to relieve some of that pressure. And that might be talking to someone. That could be a coach or someone that you hire. It could be a pastor or member of the clergy or a good friend. It could be upping the amount of self-care that you do and making a determination that no matter what the test results say, I'm taking this as my wake-up call. And that we all know that there are things, including me, I consider myself a little bit of a health nut, but I am not perfect. And so if I had that wake-up call moment, I can promise you there are things that I would change, and I would make that promise to Creator or whoever it is that you make your promises to, and stick to it. So yes, I absolutely have fear. And one of the things that I do is I realize I am not alone in this this struggle that we call human existence. And I am not afraid to ask for help.
Isn't it so important to ask for help?
Huge.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard. What are some of the most common problems you see your clients grappling with? And do you see things have changed in the last 10 years? What about midlife? And you've got all of a sudden, it's something you never dreamed was going to happen. I know with this epidemic of aging parents that so many people are being faced with these kind of issues.
You've really hit what some of the bigger ones are. I would call it the universal umbrella for that is being a caregiver, because you're still a caregiver. When we are of the generation that I'm in, and you too, even though you're younger than me, have aging parents and adult children, and we truly are the sandwich generation. The other thing that I would throw in on top of that is that the children that we're referring to have their own children, and very often they look at us, you and I would be the grandmas, and presume that we're going to be available for childcare without even asking. And so one of the things that I deal with my women clients, and I deal primarily with women, is having the courage to say to your own child, hey, you know what? I did the parenting thing. And as much as I love you and I love your kids, my grandchildren, you can't just come over here assuming that because it's Wednesday, I'm free. I've got plans, or we were going to be out of town that week, or whatever. So teaching them that boundaries take courage, being able to say no, not just to your kids or people that are asking you for personal favors, but to employers, and to say, you know what, I worked the last 3 weekends in a row and I gotta, it's my anniversary, whatever it is. So those sorts of things. And then I think the big thing, the unspoken, and the one that people have a hard time putting into words and are almost embarrassed to talk about. And that is when they come to me and they say, I don't know what's wrong. I just know that I'm not living my purpose, and I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why God put me on this planet, and I feel like I'm letting him, me, everybody down, and I feel foolish even saying it. And that I hear that quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. And it seems like that, again, has something to do with the baby boomer generation, because we were workaholics. I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, and that whole thing, taking care of everybody, and we get lost in it. We get lost, and then we forget who we are. And if there's this period, especially where we're overgiving, or now everyone's out of your life, it can create a void because your role has changed so much. So when the role changes so much for someone, that could be a huge issue.
Yes. Remember at the very beginning, the first thing you asked me was, why do you call yourself a midlife courage coach? And I say, because it takes guts to live the second half of your life for you when you've lived the first half for everyone else. And what's happened is we as baby boomers and as women have trained everybody that we will always say yes, that of course we will take care of the kids. Of course we will run mom to the optometrist. Of course we will work this weekend. Of course we'll bring the green bean casserole to the potluck.
So why is it we do that as women?
I think it's an innate need for approval and love and acceptance, and that we believe that, and if you've read the book, The 5 Love Languages, that we believe that if we are kind, giving, we are always providing acts of service, and we are always giving encouraging words, that we will be loved universally, and that it will be reciprocated when it's needed.
And do you think that's why some women are afraid to go after their dreams? They're possibly afraid of being judged, or what's going to happen? What will they do without me? Even at work, what will they do without me? No one knows how to do my job. I've been doing it so many years. I can't do that to them. And of course, they're pulling on your heartstrings too, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting that you use the word judged. In addition to this being my birthday week, this week I'm going to my 45th high school reunion. And I had a number of friends say to me, why the hell would you go to a high school reunion? Those things are so terrible. I go and it's all a fake fest. And I say, which reunion are you talking about? Because I'm coming up to 45, and 45, the pretenses are dropped. By the 45th high school reunion, many people are divorced. have lost jobs, filed bankruptcy, their kids perhaps have gone to prison, a parent has died. And I'm not saying that to be somber, but to say none of us have been spared having at least one horrific thing happen in our life.
Yes.
Someone that you loved was taken from you prematurely, your house burned down, you got cancer, whatever it was. We all, in 45 years, have had some terrible moment in our lives. And so that is a great equalizer. I had 2 members of my high school class die this year. They won't be at the high school reunion. That is far different experience than I had at the 20-year reunion. At the 20-year reunion, we were all talking about who got a promotion, who lives in a bigger house, how many kids we have, who came to your wedding, what you're investing in. Somebody had bought a plane. That kind of, that people cared about at that time now is no longer important. I'm not buying more stuff for my collection. In fact, I'm downsizing.
Right.
And what I want to do when I go to my reunion is talk to those people and have a conversation like we're having now that has meaning. Never in any of this conversation or in any of the conversations that you and I have had offline do we talk about braggartness. I don't brag to you about something I just bought or that I just got some award I just won. I want to know what's in your heart. And you want to know what's in mine. That's where we're at this point in our lives. And that's why I'm still happy to be alive.
Oh, that's so fantastic. This is just a great way to wrap things up because I think people have gotten a really great feeling of who you are and what you do. How can they connect with you?
Go to www.fork-road, ROAD.com. That's fork-road.com. Or you can email me. Just email info@fork-road.com. And I answer all my own emails personally. And I think you'll like my website.
Great. It's been so wonderful connecting, and I'm sure we'll circle back.
Thank you so much, Katana.
Okay, wonderful. Go out and live with more purpose, more passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.